Let's get to the reason we're all here tonight. Melissa Perri. I'm really excited to host Melissa tonight. She's the CEO of Produx Labs. She's a senior lecturer in product management course at Harvard Business School. She wrote this great book, Escaping the Build Trap. Again, her Twitter handle is Lissy Jean if you want to, tweet anything she shares or any screenshots. And I'm excited to hear from her today, her advice on the product of you, how to grow your product career. So with that, Melissa, please take it away. Welcome.
Right. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here. Today, I want to talk to you about the product of you and what you could do with your product management career. So why am I talking about this? As you know, since some of you got the book, I wrote this book, Escaping the Build Trap. It came out in 2018. Also, publishing a book is like the most anti-agile thing that you could possibly do with your life. It goes against all the principles of product management. And it was really uncomfortable for me because you release it and then you just kind of have to like wait for people actually to read it and come back with the feedback. So, and you can't really go back and change it that much too once it's out there. So not many iterations. But now that the book's out, I've been getting hit up by a lot of product managers and companies who are like, I love the book. I love learning what's in the book. It's given me a really good framework for how to think about product management. Like, I know what it takes now to get out of the build trap. I understand that I need to focus on outcomes and have a strategy and product management and product managers who do all this. I get it though, but so what do I do now, right? How do we actually do these things? Because while I understand this, my leadership doesn't. And what I've come to realize from working with lots of companies around this is that we don't really have enough product leadership representation at the executive level. So to get out of the build trap, you really need to have strong product leadership. You need to build a great framework throughout your company so that people can follow the lead on the product visions and what you're going to create there. So the good thing is many companies actually realize that they need great product leadership now. Go back like 10 years, you said chief product officer. A lot of people were like, what? No, like product is something that reports into the CTO. We don't need a chief product officer. That's not a thing. But now a lot of companies are hiring in. Over the last couple of years, I've worked on something like 30 odd different CPO searches for growth stage companies, big companies, startups looking for these leaders. So we're making a lot of progress. We're making a lot of progress in this industry to get more product leaders here, but there's a problem, and it is a pipeline problem. There's just not enough people with those current skills to go around. So when we do a chief product officer search, it takes like 6 to 9 months with an executive recruiter to fill that role. And it's really about looking for the right fit. And a lot of people just have not had some of the experiences we're looking for. But that's where you come in, because I want to tell you how you can position yourself well for the chief product officer role and what you can do to further your career here. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What do we do to actually get into that role? And what do companies look for in a product leader? So we're going to first start to talk about what skills do you need to be a product leader? What do companies look for? And how do you position yourself accurately for that? And then what do you do once you get the job? Because once you get it, I want you to keep it. And some people don't. So we're going to really talk about what you do to land that job, to thrive, and be a great chief product officer. So let's start with first, what skills do you need to be a product leader? And how is it different than being an individual contributor? So Georgie Smallwood, who is the chief product officer, she was of N26 when I made the slide apparently, but Tier Mobility now in Berlin, she says, the role of the CPO is essentially the same as being a product manager. You're the intersection of the user and the business, but the stakes now are much higher. And what do we mean by that? When you're thinking about the stakes being much higher, you need to have a really deep understanding of the details and the dynamics that make your business run. You need to understand financials, and then you have to connect that back to the vision and to the people and the market you operate in and tie it all in to further the business. You need to have a crystal clear understanding of who your customer is and what value really means to them. And your number one product as well becomes your team. And I'm not talking actually about your product team, but also the executive team. So the people that you're working with every day. So you need to remember all of that. And then also you need to be able to operate at speed without ever having them under control at the same time. So there's a lot more that goes into this, according to Georgie. And when you look at the skills needed to be a great chief product officer, That is true. So let's talk about how this shifts throughout your career. When you first start off as an associate product manager, you're going to be primarily tactical. And tactical skills, even if you're not an associate, let's just say you're team level, tactical skills are about how do we, do wireframes? How do we write user stories? How do we break down the work? How do we run experiments? How do we do the measuring success? All those things that we learn in Product 101. And those are incredibly important because that's how we ship product. But we've got two other facets of skills. We've got operational skills and strategic skills. Let's start with strategic. Strategic are about where are we going? How do we position ourselves in the market? Where do we want to play? Do we want to go up market? Do we want to go down market? Should we attack these new opportunities? What would the outcomes be? Those are strategic type skills. And then operational bridges our strategic with our tactical. Operational skills are more like how do we operationalize that strategy, deploy it down well into roadmaps, and then communicate to the teams and pull it back up? How do we work together as an organization to actually get these things done? And it's about really putting this work in motion. So when you're starting off as a junior product manager, you're going to be primarily tactical, but you still need to be a little bit strategic, because when you get to be a chief product officer, you're mostly strategic. And VPs tend to play kind of half and half. You find that some VPs are extremely operational, other ones are extremely strategic, but they're kind of playing half and half. That's usually where we want to be. We want to be a little bit operational, a little bit strategic here. But when we get to CPO, highly, highly strategic. Now, when I say that you need to start being strategic at a junior level, this is very important because it enables your career ladder throughout your career ladder in your organization, and it allows you to move up to the next level by flexing that strategic muscle and getting more competent at it. And that is why I really get mad at things like SAFe, because SAFe separates this product management and product owner role, and it takes away all of the ability for product owners to actually learn the strategic pieces of it, because the product manager is now in charge of it in the SAFe world. And that doesn't work. One, that's like a lot of overhead that you just don't need. And two, you get your product owners not flexing their strategy muscles. So how can you possibly develop talent when they can't get any of that experience whatsoever? And I've seen that play out over and over and over again in large companies that are adopting SAFe. And some of the large companies I've seen start with it early, they're getting rid of it for these reasons. So I need you to also remember this, that SAFe was not made by product managers. Nobody who develops SAFe is a product manager. Nobody. They were developers, and then they were consultants, but they have never been product managers. So they're not looking at what we need to develop great products. So we really need to say nope to SAFe and start to think about what we can do to really develop our talent and what does it mean to be a great product manager. So when we're looking at what it takes to actually do product management at every level, I like to think of it more like this. It's got so many, we basically take in all this information and from a lot of different areas, from customer and user research, market research and data, financial data and implications on sales, user data, technology implications, all this stuff, right? You're all nodding because you do this every day. And that feeds into our little synthesis machine, which is our brains. And then we have to figure out where to go from it. So that's how we figure out product. Our primary responsibility as great product managers is to synthesize this information and figure out what direction we should go and make the decisions about priorities and visions and directions and lead the team that way. So that's a lot of information that gets thrown at us, and we have to make sense of it. So it's a really big sense-making skill. So when we start to think about CPO versus individual contributor, you're now making sense out of all of the products, and then you have to enable the team to go after it. So your job becomes setting the portfolio and product strategy. It's about putting product operations in place that enables the team to go after that strategy. And then it's about communicating that strategy out to the organization and to the executive teams and the board and the world so that they know where to go, and communicating why we're actually doing this. So what does this look like? Let's start with portfolio and product strategy. So I define a product strategy like this: a framework that enables teams to make product decisions about how to provide customer value, which in turn drives business value. It's a mouthful. Let's break it down, right? A framework that enables teams to make product decisions. So it's not a plan. It's not just a list of features that say, this is how we're going to get there. It's allowing people to make choices in light of a good product strategy. And it also is about how to provide customer value, which in turn drives business value. So it's connected back to all of those things. So good strategies in companies actually consist of several layers that are organized by time horizons. So at the top, we've got a vision. And that's where we answer for the company, where do we want to be in 5 to 10 years? What's our value for our customers? What's our position in a market? What does our business look like? CEO, senior leadership, the exec team, they set this. And they make sure it tells a great story and that the vision is not like, be the best bank, because that's not going to get us anywhere. We want something that's differentiated, concrete, and lofty that we can all go after. The visions are usually on a time horizon of 5 to 10 years. The bigger the company, the more people you have, the slower you typically move, longer it takes to reach the vision. Strategic intents are what business challenges are standing in the way of us reaching our vision. And this affects the entire company. So think about these as company goals. Where I see a lot of companies go wrong is that they have executive teams with different goals for each one of those executives, but no combined company goal about what our priorities are and where we're going. And that is a huge gap. So senior leadership and business leads tackle this. And what they're answering in these questions are, should we go up market? Should we expand geographically? Should we go down market? Should we, completely reposition ourselves and go after something else? Lofty decisions that affect everybody. And we prioritize those. And I say usually you can't have more than 3 because then you're just distracting everybody in the company. Then what we do is we look at all of our products in our portfolio and we go, okay, what problems can we address to tackle that challenge, those strategic intents, from a product perspective? And this is set by the product leadership team, directors, VPs under a CPO. This is coming in at those mid-levels. And these are big problems to solve. These are not feature-based problems. They're big problems to solve. Once you figure out what those problems might manifest as, you can start to talk about them in features, but you usually want to leave them broad because there's multiple solutions underneath them. Options are, what are the different ways I can address that problem to reach my goal? That's set by the product teams and the product managers. So usually product initiatives are on a timeline of 6 to sometimes 18 months. Options are like things you can do quarterly. Sometimes they'll go a little bit longer for a loftier solution, but things that you can release and get feedback on pretty quickly. And I call those options instead of epics or solutions because I want teams to remember that it's not just about one feature that you can build. You have different options to actually solve these problems. So what's usually missing in organizations is the strategic initiative and the strategic intent and the product initiatives. And I call this the missing middle. And a lot of times we have the vision and a bunch of stuff the teams are doing, and there is nothing connecting those things in between. And you could start to understand that when you go and you ask people about, what are you trying to achieve? What are the outcomes? Why are we doing that? And that's really hard to gauge if you don't have those pieces. So that's why it's really important for product managers, for product leaders to put those in place and to help steer the team towards them so that they can prioritize. So our CPO of VTS, Guijo Matthews, he says, if you don't know what are the most important outcomes for the business, then you have to get smart on that. If you do, then you have to be able to identify and execute a strategy to get to that outcome. So when we're thinking about setting strategic intents as a chief product officer, you are part of that conversation. And sometimes CPOs in SaaS companies lead the fight on that. They lead the analysis, they lead getting in there and trying to figure out where to go. So when we think about what you need to do to set that, it's really, really important that you start to understand the business and how it operates and how it makes money. And we need to also make sure that we're giving our teams options and not mandates for people to connect the dots to get there. So that's really, really important. So one thing you need to do is get great at storytelling. And when you're telling stories, both to your team and to the organization, you want to make sure that you're relating all the stuff that we're doing back to those outcomes and back to that why. But especially with the executive team, you want to relate what the product teams are doing back to money. So it is so important to understand finance as a chief product officer. And this gap is usually missing a lot in CPOs or people who want to be CPOs, let's say. Everything comes down to revenue and cost at the end of the day. And usually you're looking at a few factors that influence your revenue and cost on the product team. But your executive team, your board, your customers or the market or people investing in you, they want to know how you're going to make money. And that's what really is the difference between just being a product director or a VP and being an executive. You're now the steward of the business, not just the product portfolio, but the business. And you want to make sure that you are representing that in all conversations. So sometimes I get a lot of questions on how could we possibly, relate all this back to money. Some of my stuff is in back end. Some of my stuff is, very technical. All of this stuff, though, does go back up at the end of the day. So we want to think about different strategies that we could be doing as companies, right? If you want to add new customers, which will increase your revenue, you could go up market, you could attack new markets, you could develop tangential product lines, you can acquire complementary products. So we've got those strategies. If you want to grow LTV, for instance, you could integrate with partners, you can increase your prices. All of those things will help. But there's many different strategies that you could choose as a product leader and start to rally people around. And it's your job to do the math and find that out. And then once you choose one of these, that can help enable the team to figure out what data they need to go after as well. So this is a lot of effort. Whenever you get into some kind of financial analysis or try to figure out where your strategy is, it takes a lot of work. So that's where product operations actually gets in. One of the number one complaints I hear from product teams is, I can't get the data I need to make decisions. And that's true for product leaders as well. So I want you to start thinking about these types of questions and ask yourself, can you answer these questions, right? Which products and segments are the most profitable for your product? Which customer segments have the best retention? Which features are driving sales and adoption by segment? Which products have the most time invested in bug fixes? Which products have the most sales debt? Sales debt is a fun little term. It means that we went out and sold something that was not necessarily strategic for us or on our roadmap, but now we have to deliver it for a customer or support it for a customer, and it's not something that we would be selling to everybody. Think about that. How much sales debt do we have in different products? So if you can't answer these questions, you can't set a strategy as a chief product officer, because you need to really have an understanding of where we are right now so that you figure out how to prioritize what's next. So product operations is made up of 3 pillars, and it really helps with this. There's the business data and insights part, which is the collection and analysis of internal data for strategy creation and monitoring. And those are people that can help you put together these models to show you, here's where most of the money is coming from. Here's how it's distributed. Here's how we're, pricing stuff and what it relates to with the different people who are taking us up on those pricing bundles. Here's where our money is coming from. Here's where our costs are going. You need those models. Then there's customer and market insights, and that's facilitation and aggregation of external research. So this is not about doing the research. This is about facilitating the research. So if you have a team, I'll give you an example. One company I worked with had a team of 350 product managers who all approached the same customer over and over and over again to ask them questions. That customer got upset. And when you ask them, why did they go after the one customer? Because they knew who they were and they knew that they would help them with research, but they didn't know how to get in touch with the other customers. So what we ended up doing was building a database of all the different customers. We asked the customers if they would like to opt into research. They would say, yes, I'm willing to do it this amount of time, 10 times per year, once per quarter, whatever. This is the type of research I'll do. I'll do beta testing. I'll do user interviews, put them in a list. And then the product managers could go in, find the personas that closely matched what they needed information from, reach out to them, and then also mark that they reached out to them so that we could keep track of how often they were being approached. So that's the type of thing we're talking about here. Also saving the customer research that we do in a place where everybody can go read it and understand and not repeat the same research over and over and over again. Then we've got processes and practices. And this is really about scaling product management value with consistent cross-functional practices. It is really, really hard to come in as a product leader, as a chief product officer, and say, okay, teams, pretend you got like 50 teams. I want to understand what you're working on. Can you send me your roadmaps? All the roadmaps are in 18 different formats. None of them are on the same level. Some of them are user stories, not even roadmaps. Some of them are epic level. Some of them are nothing, right? They're just a list of features that you're going to do. That doesn't tell me the information I need. So This is about really making sure that we are surfacing up and documenting things in ways that anybody across the organization could understand if they need to understand those things. It's not about optimizing stuff that's team processes solely for the team. It's about optimizing communications and the way that we work with other team members, like sales and marketing, and getting the data from them and talking to them and updating them, and then working between our product managers too. So that's what that's about. It's about really standardizing those things so that we can scale and we have our way of doing it, our way of doing product management in our organization. So let's look at a couple things that would be put out, by a product ops team. Here's a good example of a customer segmentation analysis. So when I would go into organizations to set strategy with them, I used to play interim CPO roles for a lot of high growth companies. We would have to come in and do a product ops push and try to get that information so that we could look at it and then figure out what we want to do. So we would look at things like this, like, okay, what's our customer segmentation? In this example on the, left, this archetype 1, this is a high growth company that's selling mostly to the mid-market with some enterprise and small customers. And what I can tell here is that, okay, we've got like 10 people in small biz, 15 in mid-market, 10 in enterprise. So we are spread very, equally distributed across all markets, but then also across all industries. So we're not really honing in on one customer here. We haven't really figured out what's our sweet spot and sold into that and try to maximize it there and then move on. And all of these people are going to have very different requirements, which is going to spread people really thin. So this is telling me we have to buckle down and figure out where do we want to start, where do we want to expand, and what we should move on to. Let's look compared to archetype 2. And this one, very clearly, they are serving the mid-market. Like that's their sweet spot. They're in it. So now we can start asking ourselves, do we want to target different industries within the mid-market and expand from there? We're doing pretty good in technology, financial services. Maybe we can get more healthcare. Maybe we can expand to something else. Or do we want to work within those different industries and go into the enterprise or go into down market into small business? These all become different choices that you can make, but it's hard to tell what choices we're able to make when you don't have the data. So that's why this is incredibly important and why product operations is so important. But once you have all those things and you figured out your strategy, the next thing on the list you really have to worry about is communication. So communication is so key for product leaders, and getting this right is critical for you being successful. So the biggest thing that you need to remember is that you have to relate your story to the bigger picture. And you can do this now. Like you can figure out how to do this even as not being a product leader. You have to manage up. You have to tell the people you're reporting to about this story and how it impacts them and what they care about, and position it in a way where they actually look at it and go, okay, I can see how this relates to what we're doing and how this is going to move this forward. Many leaders, executives in the organizations are afraid that product managers don't understand the business, which is why I'll keep harping on this over and over in this talk. I hear that so often, and it's because we're not doing this. We're not relating the story to the bigger picture. So how do we do that? You can use a template like this. Our goals as a company are to go up market, expand our revenue. We're trying to get to IPO, whatever it is here. By solving this problem that we're working on for this target market through our solution that we're currently building with our team, we believe we can reach those goals by unlocking the SAM, reducing our costs, whatever it's going to do that help you get to those goals in this time frame, in the next year, in the next quarter, in the next 2 years. We'll need this type of investment to do it. So you need to tell your story to get buy-in. And you need to relate it back to the person you're talking to as well. You're not going to tell the same story to your VP of product if you're reporting into them, or as to sales. Sales doesn't want to hear the same type of nitty-gritty details that the VP of product wants to hear. They want to hear about how you're unlocking sales and how you understand that they also have quotas and that you are on their side and you're going to help them get good quotas. And you are working on these things because you found out that you heard from them that it's going to help upsell this target market. Those are the types of stories they want to hear. Same with your CEO. Your CEO wants to hear about how you're furthering the business, how you're retaining the customers and enabling growth and doing all these things from a higher level. So very, very often I hear people say, my executives just don't get it. And I think it's interesting because we empathize all day long with our users. And I don't see a lot of people empathize with their managers or their executives of their company. Like, did you know that if you're working with a founder in a growth stage company, let's say that's valued at $100 million in ARR, like they typically own 30 to 40% of that company. So when you exit, they're making a lot of money, right? That's life-changing money on the line. So when they hire a product manager in there or a product leader to take over from them at the first time, they're entrusting you with their entire life savings, their legacy, their baby that they've been building, and a lot of money personally for them, not just the business, but personally. So you've got $30 million on the line now. Like, of course they're scared. Of course they're in the weeds, but you have to really think about, how do I manage that, right? Like, how do I talk to them and enable trust and make sure that they know that I'm on their side and I'm growing this for them? What about an executive at a bigger company, right? They just worked 40 years of their life to get into that position. How are they being judged for success now? What do they view as success? How are you helping them be successful? How do you relate what you're doing back to them? That's really important too. So with this all, you need to build trust. And Gift Constable, who's the former CPO of Meetup, he says, expect that you need to build trust. Don't presume it. Do invest in it, and don't think it happens overnight. So this is really, really key. So you want to start to frame things in ways of other people's personal goals and give them wins, right? Build them up. Be their cheerleader. Be like, hey, they did such a great job on this. Shout it out to their bosses. Let them know. And empathize with them like we do with our customers, right? So we really, really need to work on this trust building thing. One of the best people I've seen actually navigate really hard situations in executive teams and build trust quickly is Brian Buda. Brian Buda was the CPO of Signify Health. He's now the CPO of Forsta, because I helped bring him in there when I was on the board. And he is very, very excellent at his job. But I've watched Brian now in a variety of situations take a lot of people who were detractors and going, oh, we don't need a CPO, and turn them into supporters who were like, wow, I love chief product officers. Good product leaders are great. And they loved working with them, and they loved really being a part of that team. So I asked Brian, I said, like, how did you do this? We went like to dinner one night, and I was like, how, what magic is in here? Because tell me. And he says, you need to stay humble. You need to listen and ask questions, right? Don't presume you know everything. Don't come in there and just like assume a bunch of stuff. Ask questions. Even if they're telling you the same thing over and over again, it's okay. You're building a rapport. You're eager to learn. You're acting curious. It's not about winning the battle. Have the self-confidence and awareness of what success really is for you. So it's not about being, winning all the time, because you want to win in the long run. You don't need some of these little wins of, fighting a battle against somebody. And if it does feel like a battle, that's not great. He also says one of the ways that he does this too is that he gets people sometimes who don't know where they're going 90% of the way there, let them do the 10%, and then he gives them credit for the whole things. So this really is a make or break skill for great executives. Like, whether you're in product or not, it's one of those things. If you can build trust, if you can build good relationships with your executive teams, that's critical. And you don't have to be a product leader. Do it with your own teams now. Do it with your stakeholders. Do it with the people around you. Practice this skill, because it becomes really, really critical when you get more senior in your career. So practice it now. So that was the skills that we really need to look at, and we just went over. But let's talk about now, what do companies look for in those skill sets? And how do you position yourself with those? So now that you have the job, let's talk about keeping it, right? So I want to tell you a little bit of a story about a company I worked with. So I spent a few months in this company convincing them that they needed to have a CPO to lead it permanently. I was the interim CPO. I was like, I won't be here forever. I'm a consultant. So you really need to hire someone. And once the CEO understood the value of product management, it was like a light bulb went off. And he goes, okay, find me the best CPO. I want the best CPO. I will settle for nothing less, right? This is critical to our success. And I'm thinking, like, great, let's get this person in here. So they brought in a recruiter to go through these candidates. And when we were looking at this company too, it had been a large enterprise, right? That was repositioning itself into a SaaS company. So they had been doing lots of research, a lot of manual research, many, many different products, but they had never built a platform before and they didn't have much of a software team. So they were really starting from scratch, building this new product that was going to disrupt what they currently do. So the recruiter brings in some great enterprise CPOs. And I start interviewing. The first person I interview is from like a large global financial software system. They're overseeing 10,000 people. He inherited the product from someone else and he'd been keeping it alive for years. It had just kind of been going along. And after the interview, I tell the recruiter, like, no, this isn't the right fit because we're kind of starting from scratch here with a new product. We don't have 10,000 people. We don't even have a software team right now. So we do another. So they bring in somebody else and they bring somebody else and they're all the same archetype, right? They're all this large enterprise CPO. And at this point, I'm saying, no, it's dragging on for a little bit. And the CEO looks at me and he's like, did I stutter? Go find me a chief product officer. So I had to back up and explain to the recruiters and the CEO what we were looking for. Because not all product leaders are similar in background or type. So we've got enterprise CPOs who are used to really big companies, right? They lead tens of thousands of people, thousands of people. We've got startup VPs who work at smaller companies. And then we got scale-up CPOs. And the big thing about this is that context is king in this area, right? Context is king. What they've been working on, how they've been working on it, it needs to relate back to what your company's doing now, not necessarily what your company's been. And especially if you're doing a transformation or going through a different push, we need to find somebody that really relates to the context you have now. So when we look at companies, typically in startups, the founding team is leading product. When we get into early stage of growth, we've got some differentiation here where we got sales, marketing, product, and tech, and we have an exec team over it. This is typically where maybe we get a VP of product in for the first time. When we get into growth, we start specializing more across our functionality. And then, when we get into enterprise, we've got different business lines that kind of run like mini companies with an exec team on top of it. So where your leader sits in those companies changes every time as a product manager. So startup VPs are usually really good at going from $0 to $20 million in ARR. That's rough. $10 million, $20 million, somewhere around there. But they're good at going from 0 to 1. Peter Thiel stuff, right? They're great at coaching teams, setting up processes. A lot of times they're still executing. They're still filling in as a product manager for a while until they can get enough team around them. There's huge founder dynamics here, right? I just mentioned you had to empathize really well with your founders. You really have to empathize with them as a startup VP. And you have to make sure that you understand how much is on the line there and build those bridges. And product strategy here is really characterized by finding product market fit and rapid experimentation. So that is a very different skill set. It's about rapid experimentation to find what sticks, very lean startup-y. Now, when you get to a growth stage CPO, the stakes are a little bit higher. We've got $30 million, $20 million, all the way up to IPO. IPOs usually happen around $150 million or more in ARR. Your product strategies and portfolios are more complicated here. So you've got usually a lot of different products going on. Your strategies are like really complex, and you have to be able to oversee that and pull it all together. Usually you're doing some M&A. Sometimes you're just shoving two companies together, or you're trying to figure out how to reconcile them into your company. Board presentations become really important here. Financials are incredibly important. You need to be able to communicate what your product team is doing for the business to enable that growth. And you're scaling team and infrastructure. And sometimes you're overseeing stuff like pricing and packaging, product marketing, things that other people aren't overseeing. You're taking on more and more scope. Sometimes we even have CPOs oversee technology, just depending on what the situation is at that company and who's the right leader for it. This is all characterized by doing this in a very short amount of time. So you're making rapid decisions in a really short amount of time, because usually growth stage is like 5-ish years, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on who you are. So lots of decisions, a lot of stuff that you got to do at a fast pace. Enterprise CPOs are $100 million. It's rough, much bigger. It could be much, much bigger. There's all different sizes of enterprise, but think about it as once growth slows, we are now getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got more money on the line. Maybe we're post IPO. This is where politics really come in. Now, politics is important anywhere in your career, but it becomes more important in an enterprise. So let's just say like certain skills shift and become higher importance, critical mission. Politics is an enterprise. So you need to be able to build bridges. You need to be seen as a leader in the organization. All of this stuff is really critical. Financial acumen now is a must. But a lot of times our strategies for financials become more cost conscious instead of high growth once you get through the growth phase. You're usually taking over an existing product portfolio if you're coming into the company. That means sales debt, reconciling old products, shutting things down, but also trying to maintain innovation and spark it too. You're navigating bureaucracy, compliance, and legal become really important. If you were working in a highly regulated industry, they were always important, but now they're a lot more important. And you're dealing with massive scale. So enterprise CPOs like solving really hard problems at massive, massive scale. Like you will have the most people underneath you. You will have the biggest teams in this situation. And you love going in there and being like, how do I fix this for 10,000 people? How do I steer 10,000 people in this ship? That becomes really important. VPs here underneath you are usually owning the strategy in each business line. So you're not setting usually the commercial strategies of each business line. You're setting more like the guidelines, the tones, the strategic intents, the where we want to go. And you build the infrastructure for people to get it done. And you manage the relationships with the rest of the executive team. And you're really critical to setting the vision and how you want software to play out at your company. Now, this becomes really different too in software native companies versus not software native companies. So product in a non-software native company is like very different than software native, and it's a harder sell too. So let's think about like a bank, for instance, right? Banks have things like credit cards that they sell, right? The credit card is the product, and that's a physical financial product. But there's pieces of it with software that enable that credit card to be more valuable. Like, would you ever choose a credit card at a bank that wouldn't let you pay your bills online? Probably not, right? So while there's some table stakes things out there, the more we put software around here, the more smart we make these things, the better offerings we have, the better product we have. So when you are a product leader at a non-software native company, you're usually going to be working with a lot of other business people and subject matter experts where strategy for the software is not necessarily leading everything. So you have to figure out how to entwine it into those different pieces there too. So that's important to understand. And if you want product to be really tied to your revenue and you want control over the revenue and those financial type pieces, that's more about software native stuff, SaaS, where if you sell software, you get money, right? Software money. And there's no other pieces usually in it, sometimes services, but like it's a little bit more direct. So that's something to think about too. Where do you thrive? What type of industry do you thrive in there? I have seen a lot more non-software native companies making a shift though to be more technology forward, which does make this easier for us as well. So in addition to that, we typically build a scorecard for our product hero. So we take into account all those things I just said. And when we go out recruiting, we're going to build something like this that has context of the company that we're working with. So we look at things like product strategy. What's our size of our portfolio? What's our type of products? What's our experience with growth? What's our domain knowledge versus the capability of learning? And this is important too with the domain knowledge versus learning. I don't think you need to be, in certain situations, you don't always need to be a domain knowledge expert, a subject matter expert on the area. In more complex industries like healthcare, banking, finance, that type of stuff, pharmaceuticals, it's sometimes a boon to have that. But I've walked into a lot of organizations where they've insisted we need a domain expert as a CPO when the rest of the organization are domain experts. In those cases, you just need somebody who's really good at product and building the type of products that you build. So for instance, are you a primarily technical product like a security software, or are you like workflow type products where people are going to be going through it and interacting with UX? That's what I mean by type of products. Is it a platform? Is it an e-commerce site? Is it a marketplace? What are those types of things? Then we're going to look at org design. How are you with team building? What does this person need to do? Do they need to build a team from scratch? Do they need to transform the people in the team and level them up from, not super capable product managers to very capable product managers? Are they good at coaching junior team members? How are they attracting talent? Have they brought people in successfully and retained them? How are they at setting up operations? Then we look for process implementers. Sometimes we need somebody to come in and do a whole process overhaul. What's their previous experience with process building? Did somebody else do it or did they do it? How do they structure teams around their products? What about interdivision processes? How do they work with sales? What did they do previously to set up good communication lines between those departments? And then working with the exec team, how are their politics and communications? You can get to some of these stories too by asking them, like, how did you bring a detractor around to become a supporter? If they can't tell a story like that, maybe they had a really hard time with the exec team. Maybe they're not telling the story. Maybe it was a toxic place, and that's fine. And we can find that out through a lot of interviews. But I want to know the stories about how you work with other people and who you got along with and what types you don't. And a lot of that does come out in interviews. Do they need to have good founder relationships? Is it still founder led? What about their board management skills? Even if they have never presented to a board, are they capable of it? And you can tell those by the stories that they tell about how their products reach their goals. And are they a skill complement with the executive team? And then there's other factors that we take into account about the situations like M&A, pricing and packaging, what are you overseeing, design, engineering, all these other things. So we basically go through and build the scorecard out, and then we give it to recruiters so that they can understand who to look for. So we went back and did that at our company to find our product hero who was going to make our CEO very happy. And when we did that, somebody else emerged from an enterprise CPO, but it looked like this. We needed somebody who could run strategy for building and scaling a B2B data platform to over $50 million. Right now, we've got nobody on the new data platform, but we got to shift people into the new one and then get them up to there. We need somebody who knows how to prioritize and decommission legacy products. They have to have great EQ and the ability to work with an SME C-suite. So we got a whole C-suite that are subject matter experts. Again, I don't need a subject matter expert. I need somebody who can build product. They need to be an excellent recruiter and developer of great product talent because we need a team, and they can oversee M&A, pricing and packaging, product tech, and design. So that person wasn't an enterprise CPO, right? They were more of a scale-up CPO. So we needed to bring in a scale-up CPO. We ended up creating the scorecard. We did find somebody who was a great CPO, and we brought her in, and the CEO goes, she is just right. This is what our product leader is. So I want you to consider, what type of product leader do you want to be? And where do you fall in those spectrums that I just put out there? Because it's about finding the right fit. And it's not necessarily a linear equation sometimes. Sometimes you get into these situations too and realize this is not what you signed up for because the company's not at the stage that you wanted. So I'll tell you a story about Ted. Ted was working at this startup that I came into from the early days, and he built this as a VP of product up to $30 million in ARR. Then it merged with another $30 million ARR company. And then this became a huge company, and it brought all of their people over too. So now his little rocket ship turned into a cruise liner. And suddenly he's running product for this whole thing. And Ted was like, what is going on? Like, I signed up for a startup, but now I'm in like a cruise liner, launching rockets everywhere. This is not what I signed up for. And he could tell it was the wrong fit, and he could feel it, but he wasn't sure what he needed because he thought that success was just going to bigger and bigger companies, right? Success is my company growing, right? That's what this looks like. But what he didn't realize was that Ted didn't want to be the driver of this cruise ship. Ted really liked startups, and he was really good at that experimentation piece and getting from $0 to $30 million or even more. So Ted ended up leaving and going back to a smaller rocket ship. And when he did that, he found out that it was just the right fit for him because that's really where he thrived, and that's what he wanted to do. So at some point you need to say, like, all right, that's it. This is not the right place for me. And it's okay not to stay in situations that are not the right fit for you, and to pass up on situations that look like, or opportunities that might look golden because they're shiny or they're a really great company, but you're just not going to be happy there. Your career is not a straight line. Like, people think you just go bigger, 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 bigger. That's not true. It really looks like figuring out a bunch of stuff until you figure out what you like and what you thrive at and what you want to really be good at. So remember these couple pieces of this, right? Think about it yourself. you are going to be a great VP of a startup company, a product of a startup company. If you like building from scratch, if you like focusing on experimentation and product market fit, and you want to learn about sales, VP of startups, right? Go that way. If you are if you want to be a VP of product at a startup, learn about sales. That's going to be critical there because that's going to really help you build those bridges. Now, if you are thinking maybe I'm a chief product officer of a growth stage company, you like making sense out of mess. It's going to be very messy when you come in. You like to do sense make and then figure out which direction to go. You want to work under a growth chief product officer. So if you want to go to CPO growth stage, work for a great growth stage chief product officer. Learn what they're doing. Watch what they do. Watch what they go through. That's the best way to learn here. And then also learn about finance. If you want to be a chief product officer of an enterprise, really learn about finance. Go take some courses online. Make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand a lot about the market, especially if it's a public company and how that works. Get good at politics, right? And then focus on really enablement and scale. Get good at those skills because that becomes important there. So we went through what skills do you need to be a product leader and what companies look for and how do you position yourself. Very lastly, we're going to talk about what do you do once you get the job so that you keep it. So you came in here, you got the job. You're like, so now what? Half of the problem is actually getting the job, but the other half is keeping it. And so many people get into this position and then run into a problem and go what the hell happened after they get let go? And they reflect back on it and they're like, I don't know. That was a roller coaster. What happened? So let's talk about how you keep the job. The biggest reason I see people struggle is that they either don't have the skills for the situation that they're in, but we can take care of that. You're developing them now. You're going to get in there and you're going to look at those things. Or they don't know how to work with their executive team. So I need you to think about who is your team now? Who is your team now? It's the executive team. Instead, what they do is they go really deep hanging out with all the product managers on their team and never build the bridges on the executive team. So they can't get anything done. So you really need to make sure that you're part of that team. And bringing Georgie back, she says, build a network of other CPOs. You're no longer part of a product team, but an executive team, and you'll need others in the same situation to rely on. So you have to remember that your first team is your executive team. And that is why we're really looking for that. This is why I started this program called CPO Accelerator. It is really to help people level up their skills to become chief product officers who are great product leaders and to build that network of CPOs. So we've had over 150 people go through the class already. A lot of them have gone on to be CPOs. There's not a July class, there's a September class coming up, but our March cohort kicked off today, which was very exciting. But you need to find other people you can learn from and swap stories, and that becomes critical here. So think about it. What product leader are you? I want to leave you with that. What do you need to hone to get to where you want to go? That's how you chart your path. Think about the skills you need to develop and how you get to, and how you are going to develop them. And remember, it doesn't have to be linear, right? You want to find the place where you get in there and you say, I am just right for this position. And you are just right for being a product leader. So please work on your skills. We need more product leaders in the world. Chief product officers are going to be the next big push for all these companies. I hope you will all fill them. So thank you very much for listening. And if you would like the slides, go to productslabs.com/CPO talk, all one word. And then you can fill out a little form and there is a slide deck there.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Melissa, for that awesome talk and sharing that with us.